Thanks so much. Thanks for staying today. It's been a full day. Before we get to this conversation, they wanted me to do a little introduction about why I'm up here. You heard a little bit about my bio, but I've been heavily involved with the youth mental health movement since it was created. In 2002, I became the director of outreach of the National Mental Health Awareness Campaign, which was started by Tipper Gore in 1999. And the main idea was, let's take a public health approach to mental health. In 2006, we created the first Youth Mental Health Speakers Bureau in the country. By 2010, I had trained 50 speakers, spoken to 1 million people, wrote a book called Behind Happy Faces, and I burned out. I did what anyone does when they burn out. I joined the Peace Corps. I was like, I'm so exhausted. When I came back from the Peace Corps in 2013, I thought mental health would have changed. Everything would have been different. And what I was faced with was really not much change at all. And we'd been doing awareness for such a long time that I had an idea to start creating mental health curriculum that teaches mental health the same way we teach physical health. I created a mental health curriculum in 2013, and by 2016 it had reached about 200,000 students nationwide. And in 2016 I started thinking, this isn't enough. We need to do more. We need to change education from the inside. And so now I'm a founding faculty member at Geffen Academy at UCLA, where our aim is to teach physical health the same way we teach mental health from grades 6 through 12. And so today, thank you. Today I have the honor of having a panel of these amazing young students. And the first question I have for you all is, what is it like being a high school student today? We read headlines, we see a lot of reports, but what's it like actually being in school every day?
Should I take it first?
Sure.
Is my mic working?
Yes.
Okay. So I think a big part about being a high schooler is connection. You are suddenly surrounded by more people than you were in middle school or elementary school, and you are kind of pushed away from your family and you're connecting with your peers, and that's a very novel experience. But nowadays we also have social media, which provides a different kind of connection, because even though it claims to connect us, a lot of teenagers feel excluded or alone when they use social media. So I would say connection is a huge part about being a high schooler. And then secondly, we're just really busy and stressed all the time. We have to balance out, at least for me, I have to balance out my homework load and being a volleyball player and making time for friends, and we have no time for ourselves, and sometimes that makes prioritizing and time management really difficult and overwhelming.
I totally agree with that. As high schoolers, we find ourselves trying to fit in the social norm, and that's where social media comes into play. We get these social medias, we get Instagram, we get what's new, Snapchat, Twitter, we get everything to catch up, to be in our century. And we try to fit in, but as we're doing that, we're not fitting in, we're losing ourselves as we try to do that. And that's a big part of high school. We lose ourselves in social media, and we only realize that when we hit rock bottom and we hit that depression stage and we hit that anxiety stage. We hit that stage where we're uncomfortable with our reflection in the mirror. And that's high school nowadays. We have social media, and it's a big impact, and we think social media is so great. Yeah, it is if you know how to utilize it. But high schoolers aren't taught to love yourself. The high schoolers aren't taught that social media isn't to keep up what other people are doing. It's to express yourself and express what you want to show. And that's high school now. They forget to mention how we're supposed to cope with social media, how we're supposed to cope with dealing with ourselves and finding who we are, where we don't have any help, and all the help we get is academics, and that's social media in the 21st century.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we can often get caught up in the competition of like being the best student or being the best volleyball player or just being the best at whatever you do. I think it's so often that we lose ourselves in that, and that we lose our connection with even our friends, because oftentimes with all the homework and the lack of sleep, you just have no time to actually be a teenager. And I think that's one of the most difficult parts, is that like while we're losing ourselves in all of this classwork and being so involved at a point where we ourselves get burnt out, we also lose what we're there for, and that's to learn, and that can be really disregarded when we're just trying to keep up with the norm and trying to fit in. And I think connection is one of the biggest parts. And when you feel disconnected and when you feel like you're out of the social norm, that can be devastating. And that's one of the most it's the scariest part about being a teenager.
That's really powerful that you're not taught to love yourselves. That's really so poetic. I think what's fascinating about running mental health campaigns for 16 years is, from a stage, it sounds great. You should all talk about how you feel. You should talk to your friends. You should talk to adults. And it sounds so idyllic, but what's actually happening? Are young people open to talking about their feelings? And what are the barriers that may prevent them from actually talking about how they feel? We'll go reverse. Stella, you can start.
Okay. So I'm lucky enough to co-run a mental health club at my school, and at first it was really difficult getting girls to come and want to open up about what they're going through, and even just talking with friends. But I'm also really fortunate enough to volunteer at Teenline, which is a crisis hotline for teens, and I think that really opened the door to being knowing how to communicate with my friends when they come to me and say, like, I've been feeling this way, or I'm worried about this person. And I think one of the main things that's preventing us from opening up to each other is the stigma that surrounds mental illness and just asking for help.
I totally agree with her. I help run a club called Pep Club, and we don't talk about emotion, but what we do, it helps bring happiness to our lives. We go feed the homeless, we save up money for foundations, and we donate it. And it's not a way of getting people to hear people's problems. It's just a way of allowing kids to find a happiness in helping others. And I'm so fortunate to be able to form a group that can actually bring happiness to students who need something, who need a push to say, hey, there's a greater world out there. You just need to take one step to take it for yourself. And I think teenagers should be taught to do greater things and to talk about their problems, because not everything is about your future. Everything should be about your now. Like, how do you feel? What's going on? Yes. And that's something that I like to advocate for. It's the now. It's not so much of the future. Yeah, you can focus on your passion for your future, what you want to pursue in, but it's also about your health, what you feel. If you lose yourself, you have no passion anymore. How can you find your passion if you're not taught to love yourself? So how do you love something else if you can't love yourself? And I think that's a great part of life that we have to learn, and that teenagers have to learn to talk about.
That was so perfect, Christina. I love that. Yeah, I feel like it's really difficult to get, especially high schoolers, to open up, because as Mr. Zeba was saying in the back, we've been taught to stay quiet. We've been taught to keep our personal lives to ourselves, and that it's weak to share and it's weird to share, and that it's only okay to share if you're dying or suicidal, and that's not healthy at all. But I think at Geffen, we have a wellness curriculum where once a week, regardless of what your mental health state is, we are still given resources to talk about our emotions and learn skills and coping mechanisms. And I think that's so important to encourage kids from a young age that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to talk to someone when you're not feeling well, because right now, we feel silenced and we feel alienated when we do so, and that stigma needs to go.
This is the most succinct, inspiring panel I've seen. This is so great. And all of you just blended what is happening and what might be stopping students from talking about what they're going through with solutions. You talked about your student club, you talked about a program that exists in your school, but what else can we actually do? I think it's evident, as Caroline said, that the peer-to-peer connection is important. Neuroscientists recently found that there's a part of the brain that lights up when peers see each other that does not light up when they see me or other adults or their parents. But when they see each other, this part of their brain is activated, and it's a reward system. So what else can we do outside of student clubs that can really help? Regina, you can go first this time.
I think a big part of it is everyone asks, what can we do? Where is the starting point? Well, honestly, the starting point is talking to those students. It starts with that first discussion. It's like, hey, I know where you're going through. It's okay. Or, hey, you seem bothered. It's okay. There's no starting point without that discussion. There needs to be a discussion and a connection between person A and person B. We cannot achieve something greater if there is no discussion. There can't be a program or clubs or all these organizations if there's no discussion. If there's no connection or discussion, then nothing can be solved. Because how do you relate to that person if you haven't discussed it with that person? Like when you haven't seen that person as a person, we look for these organizations and we look for these groups. But never do we say, hey, that's a person. This isn't someone to talk about as a group. It's different people. It's not a whole group. And that's where it should start, discussions.
Carissa?
For me, I would just like to talk about it at school and learn how to help other people, because when I check into a friend and I become concerned about them, or when I hear about this friend is going through something, I don't know what to do. This isn't something that's taught to me. I don't know where to find the resources. Where is the line between this friend needs talking to and I should go get this friend help? Like, I am not taught any of these things, and I think those are very important topics for a student to learn as we're growing up together. So I wish that I had been taught how to help people in mental health and how to help myself.
Stella?
I think something that can be done is just to have more empathy for one another and really, like what you were saying, like view each other as people, really humanize everyone. And I think that that's something that can be definitely integrated into like curriculums, like what you're doing right now. I think that's incredible. And I think that, I mean, for me, teachers are people that I really look up to because I have had some teachers that have changed my life in incredible ways. And I think that teaching empathy can be really powerful, and I feel like empathy is often forgotten when we're caught up in all of our schoolwork. And so I think something that can be done outside of like peer-to-peer stuff can be learning from people who we really look up to and who can really influence us in a way that we can take what we've learned and apply it to our lives.
That's really good. And I think so much of what all of you are discussing really does come back to balance. It sounds like on one side you have all these experiences and everything you're trying to do with the competing with each other and everything else. So what are some things that you recommend to other teens to do to balance this wild mental health competition and then also like getting sleep and taking care of yourselves?
So I think I'll start. So I recently found myself in a situation where I lost myself. I didn't really know what to do, and I was losing time, but I needed to study for all my AP classes. I needed time for debates 3 hours long, and so it's basically so hard. And I realized that my time was going away in social media. So I deleted my social media, and I think I have like about a month now without social media, and I feel great about it. I don't need to know anyone's life other than mine. If the people always ask me like, how do you do it without social media? It's like, well, if you're really important to me, you would have my number. So that's the way. But I think that's the number one solution. If you really find yourself trying to fit in and trying to find yourself or trying to find more time for yourself, I think one way to go is deleting social media or not making it your priority.
Yeah.
Stella, how do you balance?
Basically, how I balance my schoolwork with everything else going on is just by supporting my peers, I find that they often like support me, so I can, being in a space where we're all supporting each other can be really helpful. And also like, I know in mental health club we often discuss like how do we handle balancing all of the stresses of our daily lives and maintaining our mental health. And I think one way to do that is being a part of a place or like a group that is supportive of one another, because really the one thing that matters at the end of the day is having people that you can rely on and supporting each other. And so I think one way that I can balance like my schoolwork and everything is just by being supportive. And although that seems kind of exhausting, it really isn't, because you're also receiving a lot of that same love and support from your peers.
Thanks. And Carissa, how do you balance?
I completely agree with what Stella said, and back to what Regina said about having a discussion, I think the first step is starting that conversation. And I feel like sometimes we're stressed about so many things that we don't even realize what we're stressed about anymore, and we just have this general weight on our shoulders. And if we just take the time to talk to a peer or someone we trust about what exactly is going on inside our brains, and we take that time to self-reflect, that could really help to balance out our lives and figure out what our priorities are. Just taking that time for yourself and reaching out to other people and starting that conversation is really important.
Well, it was really great hearing from all of you. I think one of the joys of having experience with young mental health advocates is how much your voices matter and how much you shared with all of us today and how powerful all of you are, not only in your own lives, but what you do for your schools as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.